See, I said last week I was going to get a new monitor, and I lied.
Oh, you didn't pick it up?
No, it's sitting in the closet. And now I'm trying. There we go. Now we're out of Spreaker, but we're still doing Mixler. And we're still live on Google Hangouts somewhere.
Good group in chat this morning. You know, Mike Phillips said an interesting. He's just really good for topics in the chat there. But Mike, we were talking about Stitcher and their audio quality is terrible, and it is. It's a step above Blog Talk Radio, but not that big of a step. I think the market is going to dictate for these streaming services, because Spreaker's not that great either, and Mixler's okay, but I think the market is going to dictate quality, and as bandwidth gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, I think you'll see a Stitcher. Well, the other thing is, too, Stitcher keeps the bandwidth low so that they can deliver it to you in just about any kind of situation. 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, good and bad. They don't compress it to save money, although they probably do a little bit, but mostly so they can deliver the content to you in a way that you actually can get it. Now, I don't know if they have variable streaming where it will adjust like YouTube does. It will adjust the player based on the bandwidth that you have available at the time. But I think we'll see more of that, and then we'll see them as the market gets bigger. I think we'll see bigger and better options for things like Stitcher to provide better audio for you. So I think it's only going to get better, not worse.
Yeah, that's it's going to be interesting because more and more things are popping up. I know just the whole podcast about podcasting thing is a lot of people coming into the pool. Every time I turn around, I'm like, all right, well, that'll mean more people podcasting, which means more and more people are going to start creating services.
Yeah, although I think there's a threshold there where we may be peaking again. These things go in these waves. Mm-hmm. And I think we might be at the top of the crest of this wave of popularity with podcasting, and we'll see a dip, and then it will pick back up again. There can only be so many podcasters. It takes an enormous amount of discipline and time to do what we do. I mean, Dave, I was telling Mike Howard this morning, I'm like, my show notes and the publishing of one podcast takes longer and longer every week because I add in new things. Yeah. It goes to Spreaker, it goes to Mixler, it goes to Podomatic, I post my own, I'm adding end cards, I'm now doing annotations in YouTube, I'm, getting show notes everywhere. Well, God, that used to take 2 hours to post a show. I bet I'm up to 4 now to get it, and I'm way more efficient than I used to be. I'm just doing so many thing. I say that. I'm talking about writing the show notes from beginning to end, right? Downloading it, listening to it, stripping the audio, creating the show notes. Yeah, it just takes, so that's a barrier to entry. And somebody said, I forget who it was, maybe it was Mike, had said, I'm kind of glad there is a barrier to entry to podcasting because it doesn't allow just everybody.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You don't want so much noise. But you do want a commitment, and people at least trying.
Yeah, because it would be interesting if everybody can start a podcast. It's those people that that's the whole whatever episode 7 thing where they bail out.
Maybe it was Cliff that said that he's glad there's a little bit of a barrier. Do you remember that in your? I listen to so many things during the week; they all kind of start blending together. Yeah. Mike Phillips says it wasn't him, but somebody said that there is a little bit of a barrier.
Well, what's interesting, you know how we always talk about when you're the host, whether you want it or not, it's kind of like cool when the host, like when you get to talk to the host, it's like, wow, I'm talking with Jim Collison. Wow, that's cool. He's the average guy.tv. I got a voicemail last week, which means nothing to you. But this guy was on Cleveland radio for 17 years. His name was Trapper Jack. And Trapper Jack called and said, hey, Dave, I just found your show. You might recognize this voice. This is Trapper Jack from Magic 106, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to tell me that you were in broadcast school and blah, blah, blah. And the guy literally lives 4 blocks from me.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm actually going to go have lunch with him here in about an hour.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So, but he was, I might actually take a recorder with me. Because poor guy, Eileen, sorry, the show's over, sweetie. But we can answer stuff in chat. We're doing after show at this point.
I'd save that question until next week, and she can call in first thing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern.
But it was hilarious because I got off the phone with the guy, and I immediately called my wife. I said, Trapper Jack listens to my show. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna have lunch with Trapper Jack.
That's awesome.
The poor guy made it to #1, and it's like a soft rock station, and they canned him. And I was like, wow, yeah, they just wiped out the whole platform.
Oh, radio's brutal. Yeah. I those poor guys. I've known a few here in the Omaha area, and it's just brutal. We used to have the same situation 10 years ago. Jack and Fred here in Omaha. They were late '96, so they played 80s and '90s stuff, and they were super popular. And you get about a year or two of that maybe, and then I don't know. It's like anything. You got to always be reinventing yourself, and they eventually gone. '96 now plays. Oops.
Yeah. Eileen has a question. I don't know if I could dig it around here.
About the white pop screen filter? No, that you're using. You're talking about the one on the. Yeah. There we go. Dave's bringing it out now. Yeah. So black on one side. White on the other. White on the other. Yeah. By the way, if you're looking for better lighting in your studio as well, they've got those reflective ones too that you can buy. That they're about this big around. Like maybe 4 feet, 3-4 feet. And you can put those on a stand.
They have videos on how to wrap that thing back up. Every time I do it, it just beats me up. It's like, you're like, never mind. I'll just leave you against the wall.
It's like razor cuts on your face and stuff.
Yeah. So, but that's the. It's still around. It just, if I hung it up, it'd have to be basically right behind me because my other office was so small, and I'm like, you know what?
No, I don't like that look. I think you should. Like I said, I think you were talking about putting a poster back there, and I think.
Yeah, I got to do something back there. I just haven't.
That's a good. I don't think you have to, but you got the opportunity to. I mean,
if nothing else, I need a flag here that says School of Podcasting or something.
Yeah, what do they call those little boxes?
Like flag.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It is called a flag.
I think that's it. Yeah. They're also, depending on where you get them, it's always like, it's only $4. Then you read the fine print. When you order 48 of them, and I'm like, I really just need one, maybe two.
48?
Yeah, it's like I don't, not needed. So, awesome. All right. Well, I do need to get ready to go. I gotta go meet Trapper Jack, man.
That's pretty cool, Dave. I think that's. I mean, I don't know who he is, but it's pretty cool to make those kind of connections. I love that when listeners say, "Hey, I'm heading through town. Can we get together for lunch?"
Well, the coolest thing was, I found his last episode or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of because it was all the stuff about what a classy way to exit. Because #1, they let him say goodbye. You usually don't get that in radio, and he could have said, screw these people. They're screwing me. I just made it, and he was just like, it's been great. I've loved everybody, blah, blah, blah. And and of course, what is he doing now? He's podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing some producing for people and things like that. So, yeah, so. And he nails the post. What do you know?
Yeah, very nice. That actually worked out real well.
It did. I looked up, I'm like, we have 28 seconds.
I always see that look of concern on your face when I start talking in tight moments. You're like, is he gonna finish it?
Is he gonna make it or not? Yeah, I need a signal for that. Like,
well, we need like a countdown clock.
That would be awesome. That's what I need to do. Well, I'll look at however long that music is, and I don't know how I would get it into the Hangout or not though. But that would
how would you do that? That would be
I'd have to share my screen.
That would be good. One of the guys at work that we're doing this learning studio, which is basically a glorified podcast studio, but and he wants a radio clock in there that the producer can hit and start the it shows how long the show has been going and how much time is left and those kinds of things. So
here's the weird thing. Okay,
Mike Phillips just put a countdown clock in the. I want to take a peek at this because he wanted me to just go buy one, and I'm like, no, I don't want to buy one. I'm gonna make one. I want to make my own countdown clock. Oh, there you go. That's a nice. Wow, that's kind of cool, Mike Phillips. Thank you. That would be handy. A little countdown timer. This one is set for 4 minutes, but.
Let me see here. Well, that's about right because I've got another.
Yeah, here I'll share my screen. You can see what it.
Oh, cool.
Here, let me do that real quick. I know you got to move on to Here you go.
It'll be very short. Oh, that's cool. Now we're. Oh, that's just
Mike Phillips just threw that in the chat. So
nice. Because I use one for my classes, but I'd have to again share my screen for you to see.
Mike,
that.
is there a better interface for it than as far as setting the time? The link, I know it's set. I know all the parameters are set in the link, but do they have a UI for that makes that a little bit easier? Because that's really nice if you've got, especially when you're maybe a 60-minute, when you have a 60-minute class that you want to hold to, and then you can throw that up on the screen.
Yeah. And Jim, how long does it take to get the video of this?
It's available right now.
Okay, so once we hit stop, we haven't.
Oh, right. No, we got to hit stop first.
All right, let me go ahead and hit stop. So we'll say good. We're still on Mixler, but we'll say goodbye.
Say goodbye on YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. And we'll say. Let's see. Now how do I say bye to people? I got to switch. This is the after show.
Yeah. Hey, I did find. So I'm in the ever so exciting Amazon affiliate.
Good
user agreement.
Yes.
Which I almost fell asleep right here on the show as I was trying to read through it. But
it's hard to find, first of all.
Yeah, it is.
Because there's a terms of service and goodbye to our friends on. Oh, you know what?
Did you drop Mixler?
I never started Spreaker.
Oh,
I started Mixler, but I never, which is good because that's the one I always forget to go back later and change. So now we're still on Mixler.
It's actually a lot easier to upload to Spreaker than it is to Mixler. So,
yeah, you can't really.
No, you have to play it in. I can play it in and make it.
That's true.
You got to play it in real time. It's like Blog Talk Radio from that standpoint.
Right.
So, but here's a sentence. I think this is a sentence we all hang on. It says, in addition to is meaning they're talking about the tag. So your username .20. I wonder how they came up with that /20.
20,
yeah. Right? What is that? Anyways, in addition, you must not use a link shortening service, and you think, oh, here we go, but it's not as bad as it sounds. In addition, you must not use a link shortening service in a manner that makes
but the show has ended.
Sorry about that.
To record a message for Ask the Podcast Coach, press 1. Otherwise, hang up.
Yes.
So
Otherwise,
that's the answer, Dave, right there. No,
all right, so say that again. What was it again now?
No, that's it. That's the answer. Yeah, you must not use a link shortening service in a manner that makes it unclear that you are linking to Amazon sites. So I think by the fact that we're saying it's Amazon, it's very, very clear we are linking back to Amazon. So if you'd use theaverageguy.tv / I was going to say something I probably shouldn't have said, but something that would be a deception, right? That might attract people to come in. That's really, anyways. Right. Then that's a no-no. But as long as it's very clear, what Amazon's trying to prevent is people from spoofing other people to come in and buy stuff.
Right.
And so if you've been very, very clear, and then somewhere else, and I was trying to find that exact. They have an agreement that's based in sections, and it's like Section 2A. It does say you can't use subdomains. I'll see if I can find that here, but that's one of the.
Because that's the whole thing is if you do a /Amazon, technically that's still the URL.
Well,
right?
but it's not the subdomain, and this is where the clarification is made. When you do a /, you're now outside of the domain, and so you're satisfying both requirements. One is you're making it clear it's on Amazon, and two, you're not in the subdomain. That's why Amazon.theaverageguy.tv doesn't work, and theaverageguy.tv /Amazon does.
Yeah, maybe I'll put that back. I mean, what are they going to do? Kick me out again? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
And so Ryan Parker's saying you can't use Amazon.foodcraftsman.com. That we know because that's part of the domain. You can't have Amazon anywhere in the domain, but the domain ends at your .com or .tv or .org or whatever. That's the domain section. Everything after that is fair game, and so. Just make sure it's very clear. And I don't know how you can make it any more clear. This is where Daniel taught me. You can make it any more clear than /Amazon. And that just works out real well.
I'll have to see. The other thing that I have run into, and it's somewhat annoying, is when you use pretty links and you've already got a category or something else for it, and it says I can't make that pretty link because it already exists, and then you go through and you search and you search and you search, and it's not. I actually dug into the table the one time. Like I went into the back end of the SQL server, the SQL database, and could not find where the conflict was. Now I did find the conflict once by doing that and deleted it and let me make it, but it is a little goofy at times. I'm like, wait a minute, let me, I'll be glad to kill the category or the tag. That's another one you have to look for. But I hate when you get a conflict with Pretty Link. I wish there was a way to say overwrite it or something.
Yeah, or you could go back in and remove it, or change the one it's conflicting with. You can go search on that in there, change it, and then re-grab it again. That sometimes happens. I've had like photos. We'll use Amazon as an example. I might have uploaded a photo, picture, whatever, and it got a link of /Amazon, and then you go grab that Pretty Link, and it's like, it's already taken. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes that's a bad example with the name, but it's a good example with what happens. You might, like I uploaded a picture of a Drobo, and so it got blah, blah, blah /Drobo. And then I go to make an affiliate link with /Drobo, and I get, it's like, it's already taken. It's pretty easy to go back in and search and find that and get that done. Yeah, don't mess with the video options, Dave. There.
Isn't that fun? Look, I'm in the middle of we had an atom bomb go off.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm like an Elizabeth Taylor commercial. Welcome to buy my fragrance, White Diamonds.
There's some interesting discussion going on in chat. If you take I always go into my affiliate link when I'm gonna post something on Twitter. I will go into Amazon. I'll have associates turned on, and I always grab the Twitter link. That's the longest. It's got a lot of stuff in there. And if I drop that into Buffer, Buffer will auto shorten it for me, and it won't be. It's not a shortener that's obvious. It's at Amazon, right? I mean, that's kind of a gray area. Is that
right.
You're now using a shortener that doesn't make it obvious that it's on Amazon. Now on Buffer you can keep the link large, but then it's a gigantic.
Right. There's your 144
link.
Characters.
Yeah, it is an absolutely gigantic link on there. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that way when you pop it on Twitter. I'm thinking if I go to Amazon right now. Do you have a few minutes, Dave?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to share an item. Let me grab. In this case, I'm going to share an Amazon Fire Phone. That seems just because that's just what's on the front page. And I say, hey, I want to share this. So I'm going to click the share button on Twitter, and it does give me the long link, and it does tag it with my averageguy.tv thing. And then if I drop it, I wonder if I tweet that. Because Twitter will automatically shorten it. So they got to be okay with that, right? Because it's going to go to Twitter and get the t.co link shortener. Right. That's using their native service. So, I'm assuming if they're okay with it going out on Twitter that way, if they weren't okay with it, they wouldn't have enabled that to work from Twitter. So maybe they overlook these quick URL shorteners. These automatic ones like like Bitly and Google URL shortener and Buffer and some of those kinds too, because Buffer will definitely drop that into a very short URL for me. The other thing I do though, when I am tweeting out of Amazon that way, is I leave the via.amazon on there. Maybe this is the way they get around it, or they're okay with it. It'll say the link via at Amazon, and so I'm not tricking anybody. This is you're going to Amazon to get this. So maybe that plays into it.
Cool. See Daniel.
Maybe you should interview an Amazon legal guy.
I tried. Yeah. I said when I called up their first level support is awesome, and I'm like, ask this question, and like they told me, like they said you can't use Amazon links in an email, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I didn't see that anywhere.
But they provide an email link generator in their service.
Yeah, so, that's what I was like. And I said, would you guys be willing to come on the show? And they're like, oh, we can't. I'm like, what about a manager or a boss? And they're like, yeah, I don't. I'm like, really? Because I said, look, I've made these mistakes. I would like to help other people avoid them. And we could avoid them if we could get some like crystal clear yes, no. And they're like, yeah, we're not. That's not going to happen. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you for your support. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, Mike Phillips is saying you can turn off link shortening in TweetDeck. You can turn off link shortening in anything.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if their native functionality is okay with it, in other words, if I go to Amazon.com, find a product, click on the Twitter, and it'll open up the Twitter share box for me in any of those browsers. As soon as I send that to Twitter, I guess then I'd have to go into Twitter and turn off link shortening for everything. I can't imagine they're going to make me do that, right? They want to sell product. And so I just can't imagine. And I've been doing a lot of that, and nobody said anything. That doesn't mean it's right. Oh, man, we are sketching some, or we are skirting some interesting.
Yeah.
Did you turn off my camera, man?
Yeah, I'm still playing. I'm like, no, I don't know what the bandwidth issue was. I'm like, it's not me, it's not you.
Did my audio get better?
No. So I was like, all right, it's not the camera. I don't know what it is, but I will definitely be rebooting and testing when we get done here. It's goofy.
It says there's a hack to force Pretty Link Lite
I saw that.
Pro to make those links.
Yeah,
but you really want them. This is hurting me. It shouldn't be this hard. You know,
right.
It shouldn't be this hard if Amazon's going to live in that ecosystem. And I don't know. I'm going to say I don't know. Shoot.
Daniel has a great video on a plugin that makes bundles. And Jim, you might want to check this out. If you're recommending, buy this motherboard, buy this, buy that. It's bundle Meister bundle, fresh bundle, something. I'm sure he'll throw the link. If you just go to the audacitytopodcast.com, it's one of the last episodes. And man, I saw that and I was like, oh, that is way cool. Especially for like a podcaster saying, here, if you're a solo podcaster, click here. Because what happens is they click one button and all that gets added to their cart.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I was like,
That's a WordPress plugin?
Yeah. It's Fresh Meister bundle.
Maybe Daniel would be kind enough to drop the link in the chat for us.
Yeah, I'm going to say. It's
I
also
already used Daniel's very, very fantastic social, subscribe and share, subscribe and follow, I think is what it's called. And that thing is awesome. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah,
Some good stuff.
Is he still in the chat room? Here's the there's the link to the video.
Oh, there we go. So he dropped it in there.
Well, that's weird. Maybe I'll pull the audio off the Hangout.
Yeah, that might be your best option.
I'll start there.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's a good call.
I just think it's something with my interface is going to be my guess. Somehow, the iMic is going crazy.
It'll be fixed next week for sure.
Yeah. So.
Mike Phillips says, "Watch out, Daniel's going to raise his prices." It's reasonably priced. I just had to. I realized I did something with Daniel recently where I hadn't bought the upgrade, or I missed it, or whatever. And I think it's $12 or something. I'm happy to pay that on an annual basis for those great. If you want to see a example of what Daniel's work is, they're displayed in my right-hand toolbar over at theaverageguy.tv. You can see it in the wild over there. Just look on the right-hand side.
In the wild.
In the wild. Or at least how I've implemented them. Daniel, are we ever going to get, one of the requests I had put in is to, because I have multiple, my single site hosts multiple podcasts, and it's really designed for, today a lot of the functionality is kind of one podcast per site. And so I said to Daniel, hey, any chance we'll get like multiple where I can get RSS, I might have the top level being theaverageguy.tv, and then I might have my podcast, which would be, the average, or the Home Gadget Geeks and Cyber Frontiers and all the ones that we do, where I could get separate. He knows what I'm talking about. So Daniel, is that coming? It'd be great if that was. And maybe it's already there and I just didn't notice.
Well, there's a new player that in theory would replace PowerPress or work in addition to PowerPress that will put subscribe buttons right underneath the play button. So you could have click here for Stitcher, click here for iTunes kind of thing. I forget the name of it. Something like, it's not Smart Podcast Player. That's Pat Flynn's. But it's something like Smart Press or Player Press.
I've had good luck with that Audio Boo player. That thing has been dynamite.
See, I have to go play with Audio Boo.
Yeah, I got a great deal with them. I'll just be honest. So I hesitate to talk about them because I send people over there like, oh, Jim, they're expensive. And it's not as expensive for me, but that player concept has been great, to have a player with all the podcasts listed in order where the last 4 are showing up. Man, my numbers have rocketed on Audio Boost since I did that.
So I have to check that out.
Good. So Daniel says version 2 is coming up someday.
Someday.
Well, I'm waiting on you, Daniel. So maybe I'm the only guy that's waiting on you. But I think for for podcast networks, that's a real key. So I'm probably the one guy who wants that functionality out of them. So, but it would be great when it came. Yeah.
Yeah. Eileen says the after show's as good as the regular shows. Yeah, we just cut it in an hour because I don't have enough storage for the media file.
No, I think we could go on for a while. You just got to kind of cut it off, and it's fun. You know, the after show, what I find is the information is as good, but sometimes it's more disjointed because we're purposefully not trying to stay on topic, and so
right.
So
yeah, and usually it's something that's not. It's less thought out, I guess, is another way of saying, because it's like, well, I'm testing this. Does that work? And so in many cases, we're troubleshooting. Or
I know. Daniel, are you talking about Audio Boo? Because they did change. My contact changed too. Just tweet them, Daniel. If you've got, they are very responsive on Twitter. So at Audio Boo, and they'll pick it up.
Yeah, I have learned that with tech companies. When I was moving the front end of the school of podcasting to. I just, because I'm on HostGator, I just went, hey, for now, let's go to a HostGator virtual private server. Boy, they were kind of taking their time, and my website was down. That was, a couple weeks ago. The minute I put something on Twitter that said I've been waiting 6 hours, boom, bam. Instantly, man. I was like, well, I got to remember that next time.
Yeah, well, we talked about this on a couple shows ago. One of the listeners, JD, I think, had said, how do I get a hold of Audio Boo? And I just tweeted them immediately, and within an hour they had gotten back to me. So it's at Audio Boo.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's been a good little service. The key is not the service. The key is that player. I think because I no longer have players on my front page. Because now I have a consolidated player that just lists the last 4 podcasts that were live for all the channels. And as an example. I had some Audio Boo numbers by themselves, 20 or 30 listens on any average podcast, probably maybe up to 50 if it was really good and got some link. I have one that's got 440 since I put it in that configuration. And
sweet.
Yeah. So again, you don't have to use Audio Boo for that. The key was I had a consolidated, if you have multiple podcasts, and even if you don't, that visual representation on the page that lists the title of the podcast going back is whatever it's doing. It is triggering people to hit the play button.
Oh, did you see what Mike just put in the chat room? Mixler has added a Facebook player.
Oh.
Now we're talking. I hope it works in a... half the time they work on a page, they don't work in a group. Because for me, I have the private School of Podcasting Facebook group. That would be cool. And most of the time, I have groups, not pages.
Yeah, Daniel asked me if I've seen what's coming up on the playlist functionality for PowerPress 6. I haven't looked at it. I saw it briefly the other day. I'll let that go into 6.1 probably before I try to do that with some of that stuff. I like to be kind of middle of the road, not cutting edge, not bleeding edge, but maybe cutting edge on some of those things. But yeah, I think if you're not, so with what's coming with PowerPress 6 and the playlist examples, I think if you're not doing something like that and you've been waiting for something to do it that way, I think that's a great way to do it. And then those would go through your stats. So yeah, when that comes out, I may cut over to it just because it would give me some more detailed stats, as opposed to today. The Audio Boost stats are not very good, but it's a sexy player. And you know what? Sexy. I didn't believe this, but maybe sexy players do work.
I see the playlist now. Those are cool.
Yeah, you're on my site.
I followed the link to geeknewscentral.com/about.
Oh, okay.
What Daniel put in the chat room. But yeah, I thought about that for me. If somebody had a question about microphones or the typical kind of questions, I'm like, I could have a frequently asked question be a playlist, and just have people do it that way.
No, it's a great way to do it. One of those things, it would be great too if sometimes they would randomize, so it might move them around a little bit, just so you get some of your content that maybe has gone a little stale. You get that kind of moved up and moved around. I don't know for what reason. I am not a big advocate of putting players on Facebook. I don't. That bothers me.
I think the idea is just traffic's over there, so why not get them?
I know. I'm just saying, I'm personally like, I don't know if I want, I don't know. I shouldn't be that way.
It all depends, I guess, on is it just the player? Because then how do you get them over to your website to click the links if you want them to and subscribe? And on one hand, if you make it too easy to get everywhere, then they're not going to subscribe, which is a whole other conversation, I guess.
Right.
But
well, it's knowing your audience, right? It's knowing your audience. My tech guys aren't going to listen on Facebook. That's just not going to happen. Those aren't,
Well, I've heard so many people lately that have just said, I'm done with Facebook, because they go to send out something, and now you almost have to pay if you want everybody to see it. And they're kind of like, that's not the original intent of Facebook. Was a way to connect with people, and now it's a way to connect to people if you don't mind spending X amount of money. And I'm like, So I've heard a lot of people say, I'm not using it. I'll still use it, but I'm not banking on using that as a platform.
Randy Cantrell had mentioned, he goes, Jim, I'm seeing companies tout SSD hosting. Back to the SSD idea. Gimmick? No, not at all. We've been doing SSD storage in our SAN at Gallup for well over a year now, and it is lightning fast. One of the things that's better, especially in the enterprise and with host providers where we're talking SSD hosting, is that they're putting these together in gigantic, RAID or that kind of. It's not really called. They don't use RAID, but it's a different configuration. Where if one drive goes, it doesn't take the whole thing down. You can swap them out fast. But the write speeds to these SSDs are just so. The comparison between that and a spinning drive, even 10,000 RPM SATA, a SCSI or SATA drives that are the fastest in the industry with the SSD, and especially when you stripe them together, unbelievable performance differences at the storage level. So if you're looking at a host provider and they're touting SSD storage and you can afford it, absolutely go with it. It is not a gimmick. It is rock solid. It is faster than you would ever know. And eventually spinning drives will go away. So we may be 20 years away from that, but the life of a spinning drive is limited. We're at 6 terabytes now. We may get to a 10 terabyte drive eventually, but I just don't see that being of the way of the future. The storage that we get with SSD is they're getting better at jamming more into. Although there's some theoretical limits to that as well. So who knows where we'll go, but no, I would absolutely. Remy says in testing he found SSDs to be 4 times faster. Yeah, no, that's legit. I'm sure if it's 2 times faster, you're think about it. Think about doubling your I/O, your read and write speeds overnight. Boom, you're in. So SSD is legit, and any opportunities you get to be on anything that's running an SSD. I've got a SSD drive in my broadcast server. It's been sitting in there for 2 years now, and it just does it. Just especially on a PC or something like on a server where it's not gonna your writes are not gonna be on that OSS drive. That thing could last for forever, from that standpoint. So do it. I would do it for sure.
Yeah, Jim says, did I move my main properties to virtual private servers? Yes, I did. I haven't moved all of them yet. The School of Podcasting, the front end is on HostGator. The back end, which nobody's using yet because I'm not done with it, is on HostDime via the recommendation of the one, the only Daniel J. Lewis. And they're okay. I actually think I like HostGator support a little better. HostDime is Dime, I think is how you say it. But so that's here's the fun thing. The back end of the School of Podcasting, I'm really like, okay, I got to do this now. And the plugin that I'm using, the theme, I'm starting to find bugs. And it's like, and then I'm not even because what's going to happen is I'm going to have, the theme, or basically the plugin, it's cool. It builds courses, it does quizzes, it does all this cool stuff. And then I tie it in with WooCommerce. And I'm like, I'm not even to the WooCommerce part yet, and I'm already hitting bugs. And I'm like, there's a voice in my head that says I need to go look at Rainmaker before I really start doing this, because that's the one from Copyblogger. And I'm like, maybe because everything's there works. It's not like I've got to get this to work with that and this to work with this. This is really, I'm pieces parting it. And at any time, WooCommerce could break, or the theme could break, and it's like, there's a lot of pieces parts here, and they're not all one piece. I'm like, maybe Rainmaker is the way to go. Or maybe I just stick with digital access pass and come up with a new way to go back and use what is it, Optimize Press, because I saw Steve Stewart did something with that, and it looks a little different. I've seen a couple people do that. So yeah, so just about the time you think you're ready to rock and roll, I was like, man, another bug. I can't adjust that. I can't do this. So you can post the Mixler player on Facebook groups. Cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, there's a variety there. Let's see. I just had a couple questions in here.
Yeah, we had a question. Where are you finding these inexpensive SSDs?
Amazon. Yeah, go to Amazon right now, and if you're interested in that conversation, we talk a lot about that over at theaverageguy.tv. That's my sweet spot. So if you're a tech guy and you're interested in doing some of those, talking about that stuff, we talk all things that, and then homeservershow.com as well as the other show that we do, where it's all that tech. And these guys would have opinions about which ones are the best, and Samsung makes an Evo drive that is really nice. But yeah, you can go over there, and they're super cheap is relative, right?
Right.
Super cheap to what they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But you're paying, you can find some great drives. Samsung drives are great. SanDisk, there's a whole bunch of makers. I wouldn't be, a year ago, who you bought mattered. Everybody's kind of caught up now. So, I wouldn't buy the absolute cheapest one, but I may not buy the most expensive one either in the process. Daniel says, I'm thinking of switching to Wired Tree. They offer both pure SSD and SSD hybrids. The SSD hybrid is a great solution right now. That's the one I was just kind of talking about at the local level, where you have your OS on your SSD and you have your data on a spinning drive. That's a hybrid. That's what that is. And some data providers, some VPSs, they'll put your cache data, the stuff that you use the most, will go on SSD. Everything else will go back to spinning. That's how they do hybrid, and they make it work. And that piece works. That works equally as well when you're talking about getting your data to your Dave. I've noticed a huge difference in your site since you've moved over to the VPS. I mean, it's much more responsive over at a School Podcasting than it was before. So nice job.
We're getting there. So anyway, but yeah, we should probably wrap her up. I know the new media show starting. Oh, I'll probably go over and check that out.
Yeah,
so
very good.
We'll say goodbye to Mixler here. Yes, I want to stop.
I'll throw a link to an SSD, Joe, if you're still listening. I'll throw one in the chat here in just a second. And
or go to theaverageguy.tv/Amazon.
You killed Mickler already.
Oh.
That's all right. I'll just throw it out in chat.
There you go. Awesome, man. And he nails the ending.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Hey, that's a good question we should talk about sometime. Is when you own the show, when you're the host, like in your case, you own the show. What do you do when you're not? And it's live in this case. What do you do?
I thought about it. I thought about, if you went and set up a Hangout and then gave me the code, I could put it on AskThePodcastCoach.com. And I'm like, maybe we don't do phone calls that week.
Yeah.
And it would just be a Hangout with a chat room.
All kinds of crazy stuff that you just stress out over, and then it doesn't work anyway, and it's kind of crappy audio. It's kind of fun. I think 5 years ago, all that stuff was really, really cool, right? Because nobody was doing it, but it's so overdone now that you're kind of like, I just take the week off. It'll be fine, from that standpoint. But
I thought about trying to do it from Texas, like maybe if we, and then you're at the mercy of that. And I have no idea what's going on at 9:30 on a Saturday.
You know what? You're in conference mode. You think you're sitting in the chair right now, and you're thinking, oh yeah, we can so do this, right? We can make this happen. And then you get there and you get swept up in the conference, and you're meeting people, and you spend an hour and a half figuring out how to get it set up once you get there, and then you do the show and you get it done, and you got to tear it down. And I don't think there's a good ROI on it, because you miss things that are going on.
That's it.
There at the conference. You just need to be on conference. I guess the question would be then, so if you're not going to do it, and I'm not asking you this question, although I am, but the podcast community in general, how comfortable are you with your co-hosts running your show when you're gone? So in other words, I would do a version of Ask the Podcast Coach, but I would do it at theaverageguy.tv, because so that way you don't have to give me all your crap, right? All your passwords and stuff. And then I give you all that, I give you all that content, the audio and the video, to then upload into the Ask the Podcast. I'm not saying I want to do this, but how comfortable are people doing that, right? Because that's kind of an interesting thought to say. Do you if you have a show with co-hosts, how willing are you to let go of your baby? You know,
that would be weird. It takes practice. When I was my first run at college, I was the student newsletter editor, and I loved it. I was going around doing investigative stuff and basically pinning the president of the college to the wall, which was fun. He didn't quite appreciate it a whole lot, especially because he was providing the computers and the printer and everything else for the newsletter. So it was kind of biting the hand that feeds. But I really got into it, and it dawned on me that I enjoyed that a whole lot more than I did, blowing up stuff in the lab. And so I had to tell myself, okay, I will still be a writer. I can't be the editor. And that was one of the hardest things I had to do because I'd gone through and we designed a logo and all this stuff. And when I took over, they didn't have a newsletter. Everybody that had ran the newsletter had graduated, and I was like de facto editor because I was the only guy left. And they didn't have a computer. So I went through and set up this whole newsletter, and it was cool. And we had a cool April Fool's edition every year. And then I had to leave it, and it was weird because I gave it to one of the writers, and he became the editor. The first thing he did was change the name, and I was just like, "Oh, that's my baby!
No.
You changed. That's what it's."
What are you doing? Why are you ruining my stuff?
Yeah, and I was just like, "That's all right. This is 4 years from now, I won't be anywhere near the school, and who cares?" So.
Well, Sergeant Fred out in chat brings up an interesting point, and I didn't think about this. I mean, I've thought about it, but I didn't think about it just now, is to pre-record the show early. We could record it on Friday night. I'm just making it up.
Yeah.
And do an hour long, and then you just either you put it in the feed or you play it, then you play it on your channel, whatever, right? One of those kinds of things.
If we had more time, if I had thought about this ahead of time, I would go back to old shows and where we actually had callers. I wowould put it all together and say, here's a best of Ask the Podcast Company.
Oh, there you go. That's a good idea.
And just do that. And I thought about that. I'm like, that's a great idea about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, So.
No, it's some good things to think about. I mean, that's those things we started this just as an experiment. And so it's quickly becoming, just look at how many were out there live today. I mean, it's quickly becoming I think, fairly successful in what we're doing. And we get some great feedback.
Well, if we gauge the show not on numbers, but on like interaction and feedback, it's a huge success.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many downloads we get of the show because I upload it and go like, okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look at the stats. I'm sure if I go into my email now, it tells me how many people.
No, and the older your show is, the less you can trust your stats because people sign up for stuff and then never listen to it. I think it's engagement, like you're saying. I think the at the end of the day, if you're selling something, the measurement is how many did you actually sell, not how many looked at it.
Right.
So it's in this case we get some great feedback and some great. Today the calls were just one after the other. Boom, boom.
Yeah,
boom.
that was cool.
So, yeah, it was fun.
And I liked. I forgot to mention it, but Fred had mentioned Isotope. It's a noise reduction thing, and I believe that's what Adobe uses in their software. I think they have a licensing thing with Isotope. It's IZ. I'm looking through the chat. And he said it was like $40. I thought it was more expensive than that. There's also Sound Soap, which died and came back from the dead, which I used to use in the past. Same thing. You listen to the noise. There's actually a tool for that in Audacity as well. That's of course free. I can't find. Well,
Steve Stewart has a great idea, Dave. Why don't we take the last 4 post shows, because sometimes those are as good. Take the last 4 post shows, stitch them together, and just throw that out as an episode.
I could do that actually.
Yeah, that would be fairly easy because you're just downloading the audio, stripping out the post show, and then just say this was we're going to be gone this week. This is the post show from blah 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 that you didn't hear because they never hear that, right? You don't put that out. There you go. That would be easy. Steve, nice job. Great idea.
There you go. Sorry I didn't get to say Steve Stewart while we were live.
Oh, the streak has been broken.
No, I think that's on the School of Podcasting thing.
Money Plan, right? Money Plan SOS?
Yes.
Is that it?
So one of the best John Lee Dumas interviews ever on Money Plan SOS. I actually, in the next episode of Pottertainment Magazine, I wrote an article about it because John, and I actually changed the word because in the original article I said he revealed. And revealed, I didn't like that because it sounds like he was hiding it. And if you know John, he doesn't hide anything. He had 6 figures in the bank when he launched his podcast. And that's when I went, that guy's not hitting from the same set of tees that I am then. And that was that's the whole basis of that article is we keep comparing ourselves to some people, and I'm like, that's not really a fair comparison.
Yeah, good to shoot for, right? I mean, and good to steal from. Those guys figure some stuff out and they're creative. Good to steal some ideas from them. But
and he just launched a new podcast. He launched. I haven't listened to it yet, but I believe he launched Quotes on Fire. Which I'm like, okay. So I haven't listened to it yet. But, But,
hey, if it's working, I mean, let's not. I've said this before. Let's not be jealous, man. This guy is doing
he's got
doing
so much
good
momentum.
stuff for podcasting, and every once in a while we need a Laporte, or who I made fun of earlier, and I apologize, but we need a Laporte, we need a John Lee Dumas, we need a Cliff, we need those guys. I mean, think about those early podcasters. They pushed. If you think of the listening bubble, like, the population of the world is everybody within my screen, and those that are listening to podcasts are contained within my fingers right here, right?
Right.
Every once in a while, we need someone to push that bubble just a little bit bigger. It'll contract again, but each time it never contracts back to where it originally was. And we need podcasters to just keep pushing the bubble. And so we shouldn't gun them down or be jealous of them or although it's that's the American way, right? When somebody gets popular, we just try and cut them off at the knees, and we shouldn't. As podcasters, we should applaud him for really promoting the podcast platform.
You just wrote my article. That's basically the gist of it. At the end, I'm like, it's not fair to compare to other people. Be happy for their success. And
he is Johnny Hustle. Let's just say this. I mean, from a podcasting standpoint, this kid is Johnny Hustle, and I got a lot of respect for that. I mean, he sacrifices things in his life to get what he wants. It's a lot of like the Dave Ramsey thing, right? Where Dave says, "Live like none other, so you can live like none other." And that's the thing. John really sacrifices a lot of things in his life so he can have the cool stuff, and he's had great success doing it.
Yep, awesome. So, but yeah, it will be weird. I mean, I've been doing this show every Saturday for months, basically, probably going on a year at this point.
Has it been that long? Have we been doing it that long?
If we count the really original ones that were just awful.
They were terrible.
Me going, somebody please call. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it starts rough, and then there's some pretty. I think we do some there with no callers where it's all just our content. But then recently we've had enough callers to make it really kind of fun in what we're doing. And what I like the best is I just love the regular chat folks who come out every week. When we think of Mike Phillips and Addie and Mike Howard, when he's out here, he's putting his kid in school today, so he's gone. But Ryan Parker and Steve Stewart and Dustin and Sergeant Fred, who's been coming out the last couple weeks, JD, those guys, that to me, that's cool to see you guys come back every single week.
Yeah, and Mike, are you at Podcast Movement, Mr. Phillips?
Phillips.
I was wondering about that because I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to see most of the guys in the chat room at Podcast Movement, and I'm like,
yeah. Jason Bryant says in chat, he says my entrepreneurial model isn't his. It isn't going to be, and it's not. Let's see, isn't going to be like his, and I don't want it to be like his. So. That's a great point, right? Is that his entrepreneurial model isn't the only one, right? You make your own. I mean, listen, I do a tech podcast every week. If there could not be a more tired podcast model than a tech podcast with a bunch of guys, it's a sausage fest every single week. Okay, that model is tired. But I love it. I love doing it. I do it for me, right? For me, it's a chance to learn. I think of all the things I've learned from the guys that I've had on my podcast, guys and gals that I've had on my podcast talking to me about stuff that I didn't even know. I learn something new every single week on my own tech podcast. So could I quit and say, tech has been done, it's been overdone, it's consolidated, the best ones are already getting the most, the best networks when we think about the tech podcast networks. I've even heard Daniel say on one of his Audacity podcasts, don't do another tech podcast. He was like, if you're going to do it, don't start another one. We have plenty. Well, I kind of disagree with that in a ways, because in this model, my tech podcast is different than everybody else's, because I don't try to mimic, or I don't try to be like Leo Laporte. I do some things similar to him, but I don't try to be like him. It's my show. It's what I do. It's the things I have. So, yeah, that's great, John. Just do your thing, right? You don't have to be them, and the numbers will tell, right? If you're comfortable with the numbers, be you.
Yeah, and Jason, are you going to Podcast Movement? Because Jason, when Podcast Movement is over, I need to talk to you, because I'm privy to some stuff that's going on with Jason, and I have an idea based on his idea, and I don't want to spill the beans because I don't know how public he's going on with what's going on, but he cannot. Okay.
Well,
but yeah, when I get back, Jason, we're gonna have to do a little phoner action because I got an idea.
Mike Phillips says success podcasts are more tired than tech podcasts. So he's probably right on that, how to be successful, but that seems to be where things are going. Then he says, however, if you want to start a tech podcast and beat the rest, do it. And I totally agree. I mean, it's like there's no rules here. Just if you want to get going, just do it. And you know, I was looking at my numbers the other day. I was just talking with Mike Howard. Are you okay on time?
We're good. We're in 10 minutes. I'll be bailing because I gotta go to the bathroom, and then I got a consulting call, and then I'm off to get my hair cut. Rock
on. So me too. It's Haircut Saturday. Yeah. So Mike Howard and I were talking about our podcast just last night. You know, he's my accountability guy, and we just talk about what we're doing. And I told him, hey, you did something really cool on your site, and I'm going to completely rip it off. It's one of those kinds of, you know, relationships. I'm going to totally do what we do that. You know, we have that kind of relationship with each other. But I was looking at my numbers, and I'm like, I had this thought last night. I'm tired of being at where I'm at. I'd really like to see my numbers move. What am I going to need to do? Right? What do I need to do differently to make those numbers jump? I'm the same place at work, by the way, with that podcast. We've been doing that about a year now, and then numbers have stabilized. And so I'm thinking, how do I get to the next level? What do I need to do? Or can I, or should I, or is the audience even there, right? Is my niche so tight that that even if the harder I push that 80-20 success rule, you know, that the most economical part of your business is the first 80%. It's the last 20% that get really expensive when you try and make it better. And I think podcasting can be that way too. It's enormously expensive to reach the last 20% of your audience because they're so hard to find and to get engaged. So how much effort do you want to put in to reach that last 20%?
Yeah, that's I was listening to, I forget what show, and they're talking about how Apple has just dropped the ball in podcasting, and you know, the X amount of percentage are using Spreaker and this and that. And I said, that's actually kind of a cool thing to hear, because that means there's an untapped market there that hasn't really caught on yet. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's a bummer that those people aren't really engaged with podcasting yet, but I was like, on the other hand, that means there's still room to grow.
I think so. We're on a second or third, whatever you want to call it. We're on a new cycle. I mean, I think we're in the early days of a new cycle where we're starting to see a lot of players jump in, like a Spreaker, like a Mixler, I'm seeing them pop up all over the place, like a Stitcher, where it's that, again, to expand the bubble to the next level, we're going to need some help. We're going to need some platforms. I don't know if iTunes is going backwards. I think it's just staying still, and all these other ones are adding in. And so that's good. That's good from a podcast movement perspective. That's good from us, for us podcasters, again, that there's more folks jumping in and doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. I'm also interested to see what the next wave is going to be. Because originally it was tech people. There was a decent wave of language people that really got into podcasting. It was like the hottest thing for a while, and then the comedians, and now the entrepreneurs. And I'm like, I'm waiting for like musicians. Like Ice-T now has a podcast, the Final Level podcast, because that's the way I roll. You know, this he has a one segment called I don't hate people. Well, he says something that I won't say, but I hate stuff. It's hilarious, and it's all about just him being him, and he's live on tour now with Body Count, and it's like, okay, that would be kind of cool to get the behind-the-scenes stuff of, I know the guy from Train, Pat something, has a podcast now, so my guy could be cool. Musicians coming in to, give the behind-the-scenes tour stuff.
Yeah, that would be really good. What it will take is someone real popular like Taylor Swift or somebody like that to start doing one that's successful, and then everybody will flock to it,
Yeah, and she had a. There's a cool video. I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I watched the Taylor Swift video on YouTube because she was singing to a sick little boy in a Spider-Man thing at a hospital, and I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And who knew she could actually, carry a tune without the studio?
She can. She's actually a really good musician.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
And she's playing that guitar. I saw that video. She's playing that guitar without a strap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
That's annoying. I've been there, done that.
Oh, right. I mean, that's hard to begin with. And then they, so think about this. She just got there. It wasn't planned. It wasn't staged. She wasn't ready. They just had a guitar, picked it up. Okay, I'm going to play. And she's singing to that, and he's singing along, and not sure that was the song that I would choose to play to a 6-year-old. Yeah. But anyways, it was cute. He liked that song, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's one of those things that will be interesting to see what the next wave, because I think the entrepreneurial wave is crested at this point, and we'll see a few more people that jump in to do it. But I think we've crested on the entrepreneurial wave.
This would be good. See, I don't even know why. Actually, I know the school of podcasting, and it's when you say top. Mike is asking the question. Poll people at Podcast Movement to see how many of them are in the iTunes Top 100 podcast. Is that like in their genre? Because I think I'm number 6 of podcasts about podcasting, but I don't know if I go. I'd have to go back and look at or if I just go iTunes podcasts, if they're in the top 100.
Can I say I'm done with? I'm so over iTunes. It's like, can we obsess as a community about iTunes? Yeah. And I know why. I know why we do, but this gamification of getting a new and noteworthy, and all the stress that we get, all the questions that we get about it and stuff. It's kind of like, just create great content and put it in there. And if you hit it, great. If you don't, bummer. But move on, right? I mean, there's other. It's like, so I hate that word iTunes now. I'm so over it.
It's like,
oh, I'm so over it. I made new and noteworthy. Well, okay, great.
By the way, I just put a link into the chat room to review.
By the way, we just made new and noteworthy. Hold on.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's weird because it is slowly losing some of its influence, but it's still definitely the biggest influence.
Oh yeah, I think you've got to do it. I think we just overtalk it. It's one of those things where it's worth maybe a 1/10 of the conversation, and we probably talk about it half of the time, if that. And I'm just making that up, but it's not worth all the effort we put into it. Everybody obsesses about that, especially when they're starting a podcast, partly because of us saying you got to be on, a couple years ago everybody was like, you got to be on new and noteworthy, that's the most important thing. A couple years ago, maybe even up to a year ago, everybody was saying that conversation has died down a little bit amongst the podcasters who podcast about podcasting, but it's like a ripple effect that's still being said in the communities. And so
I still hear people talk about, I only have 8 weeks to get into new and noteworthy, and I'm like, if I hear that propagated again, I just want to go, it's not true. Please quit saying that. But what are you going to do?
Well, you just keep talking, right? You should try to be patient with people and just kind of say, okay, well, that's fine. Sorry, but let's move on. Yeah, it is what it is. Let's move on. And I don't think I've ever been in new and noteworthy. I don't care. It'd be great if I was. I'd celebrate it. I'd probably take a picture of it and post it on Twitter or something like that. But it's one of those things. It's kind of like, well, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, great. There's some things I can do to prevent myself from doing it. I'm certainly not going to do that. I'm going to set myself up in the best possible situation to get there, to succeed. But if I don't, hey, so it didn't work out. All right, let's move on. Let's not worry about it. There's other great ways to promote yourself. And not necessarily, it's not the end of the world if you didn't make it in new and noteworthy.
Yeah, I'm listening to the book Epic Content Marketing on Audible, and the last chapter I was listening to, the guy from he runs the Content Marketing Institute, said it's one thing, you have to start with great content. He says, but do not forget to leave time to promote it, because otherwise, you still have to tell people where it is. And I was like, yeah, that's good advice there. And
yeah, you do. That's a little contrary to what I just said, and I'd agree. You do have to spend some time promoting, right? So there are things you need to be concerned about. It's not just great content.
That's interesting. Podcast JD says Podcast 411, which came out in 2004, isn't new and noteworthy. That's why I would say it's new or noteworthy, and which probably means Rob just came out with a new.
No,
episode.
It's actually new and noteworthy.
Is it new and noteworthy?
It is, and I'm looking at it's the ampersand.
It should be or.
Yeah.
Well, I guess either way, it's
new and noteworthy. Yeah. No, it's yeah. But as I'm looking at it right now, guess who's number 1 on there? Quotes on fire.
Really? Well, there you go.
Yep. Well, but that's so easy to do. He's got such a huge following. He could announce,
right.
Farts
smell on fire.
Yeah.
Here's this week. Are you ready to ignite? All right. Thank you. That's our show. Brought to you by 99 Designs.
Oh, that might be the funniest thing I've heard you say. That is awesome. Farts on fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
John probably loves me. I talk about him all the time.
Well, he gets. You know what? There's some residual effect of when you're there.
Yeah.
That people will talk, right? And you'll have some lovers and you'll have some haters, but even bad press sometimes is good press. So you get that.
Ooh.
Wow, there's a lot of podcasts out there on New Noteworthy.
See, I actually hate the actual software iTunes.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
It takes forever to load. Like I have to load it to load files on if I'm playing any new songs on the or sound effects or whatever. If I want David Lee Roth or something,
right.
I've got to plug it into iTunes to do this with Soundbite, and just loading it. I'm like, iTunes. It's like, here we go. No, I don't want to listen to the music or the sound or whatever.
There's a lot of podcasts out there.
All right, isn't it amazing?
Oh wow, the Life Hacker Diet. Life's a beach.
I was amazed. It's going to be up in a few weeks. The podcast we did on the podcast review show is called the Happiness Podcast. Holy cow! I want to talk about a genre that has a lot of podcasts. Apparently, people want to be happy.
They do. Money and happiness.
Yeah. So and sex, which usually those three kind of coincide. And I was ignart. Did you ignart? Excellent. Well, I probably should wrap this up.
Hey, if you want,
which means I need to switch over to Mixer because we're still on Mixer. We're still on.
If you want help splicing audio together for this, where we take the last couple post shows, is the live feed still out on Spreaker? All all our audio that we do, or no? You don't do Spreaker. You just do Mixer, right?
I do Spreaker and Mixler, so yeah, it should be there. In fact, we haven't shut down anything. This is going out everywhere at this point.
Well, do you want me to download those and see if I can stitch them together? Would that help you in your time thing, or do you want to try and do it for next week?
Yeah, you could if you want.
Okay.
I mean, I can send you. I mean, I've got the actual. Oh, I don't have the after show stuff though.
Well, I need access to the after show, which I was thinking. Do you take those down on Spreaker, or do you leave them up there? Because I can download them from Spreaker.
Depends on what kind of mood I'm in, basically, and how much time I have. Sometimes I take it down because I don't want the after show on Spreaker because that goes out to Ask the Podcast Coach.
Do you want to?
And you know what? We didn't. I loaded Spreaker. I never hit record.
Oh, there you go. I didn't see it pop up on the notification thing, so I thought maybe you just were doing it this week.
It's funny because last week I hit start and then it didn't start. And this week I just forgot.
Well, I tell you what, think about it. If you can easily get the content to me in some form, I'll stitch it together for you. And then we'll just you can just release it in the regular cycle so that we don't miss a week. But that'd be kind of fun to put those. Maybe the last 4 to 6 shows we've had some decent conversations in the after show.
Yeah. What I could do if you want to go this route, I could download the videos.
Yeah.
Throw them in a Dropbox. And
we actually don't share a Dropbox. How have we gotten this far without having a shared Dropbox? Yeah, it's like you don't even know me, Dave.
We're gonna take our relationship to a new level, man. We're gonna share a Dropbox.
Yeah, do that, and I'll I'll splice that together and send it back to you, and we'll then you can have a best of. That'll be the best of the post show. We'll just call it the post show. And then you know what? If it's good, we'll have to think about doing that every once in a while, just to keep things going. So
have
cool.
One in the can.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll say goodbye to Mixler.
See you, Mixler.
All right, so there goes that. I'm sure yes. And I'll go ahead and publish that. They'll have the whole thing, but I don't know that we're getting a lot of listens on Mixler.
I think you might be surprised.
Really? I'll have to go back because they don't have stats, do they, of how many people are listening after you're done?
No, I don't think
they
so.
Give you stats
Sergeant Fred said, "Hey guys, you have 30 minutes of after-show content right here." Yeah, we've got between the last 4 post shows that we've done, or after the after show.
Because I know even Miss Eileen said, I think the post show is better than the real show.
We found this out when we first started podcasting that the post show, everybody loosens up and you're not so worried about being in order and not stepping on each other and you don't really care. And it ends up being really good content. So maybe I'll edit that down to an hour-long show.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll say goodbye to...
See you, YouTube.